So going back to the Uber Eats days, what were I guess, when you first joined, what was your role, and maybe how did that kind of change as the business really scaled? And what were some of the challenges that you were working on then?
Yeah, well, when I started at Uber, it was February or March of 2014. It was just me for a long time, no engineering team, no product team, nothing for the first like 6 or 7 months. So it was basically, I was almost like an analyst, if you will. And I was coming from a place. I was basically, I was helping lead a public company prior. And so, that might give you some indication of like my draw towards more early stage stuff, as I kind of wanted to go back and do that. And Uber was it was like the hottest thing in the world at the time, right? And so it was not the hardest decision to move, there, but started sort of as an IC, then sort of built a small team to run some experiments. We experimented with three things. We did this like delivery service thing, which is called Uber Rush, really early days, launched it in New York. It was like peer-to-peer delivery. It was just delivery though. It was like, I need to send, I don't know, a package to someone across, town, or I left my phone at my friend's house. I need someone to pick it up, or all these really niche use cases. It didn't really, it's not really a consumer product. And then we experimented with this thing called Uber Fresh, which became Uber Eats, which it was our first foray into food. And we worked with restaurants where we basically would actually put the food in the car before you ordered it. Uber was highly interested in, if you could deliver a car in 5 minutes, you could deliver anything in 5 minutes, or what else could you deliver in 5 minutes, which turns out it's actually pretty hard to deliver things in 5 minutes. But it was an ambitious, company, and ambitious, obviously, executive team. And so we had like a small team of maybe like 5 or 6 of us to run these experiments. We ran a convenience store thing where we literally packed a Toyota Highlander with like 250 SKUs that we found at a 7-Eleven, and you could hail the Highlander and get like toilet paper. And I remember driving one of those Highlanders around in Washington, D.C. during the experiment, and literally it was crickets the entire day. You're just sitting in a car waiting for someone to hail you, and then someone would, and then you'd hand them a pack of Skittles, and you'd be like, why did you order the Skittles? What could we be doing better? And they're like, I just thought this was so weird that I ordered the car, and the car came to me with all this stuff in it. Now there's like a startup called like Popcorn that does this. And I think there's a bunch of these. Very, very hard to make work. But it's cool if you can make it work. We got really strong signal on the restaurant side with Uber Fresh, and so that was like food on demand. There were other people putting food in cars. There was like Spoon Rocket and Sprig did some of this, in like early days. And so, the restaurant signal really spiked. And so in early stages of businesses, I'm not a big believer that consumer businesses like gradually grow from day one. It's like, if you're grinding it out at low volumes in a consumer business, you're going to have a tough life. Usually you see some kind of like deviation from the mean. Now you might be working on a product, and then you release a feature that makes it more spreadable or viral, or whatever you want to term you want to use. But like, you want to see that step change signal, and then you nurture that. And we saw that with restaurants. And so when we started expanding, that team grew to maybe 50 or 80 people. We rolled out that instant delivery product. We got excited because everybody liked to use it in LA and San Francisco, et cetera. But it sort of hit a plateau. And we asked our customers, people would actually use it for lunch a lot. And people were really happy with it. They would get a restaurant that they couldn't get access to. Sort of like the canonical example of the service is, there's this, if anybody's in LA, there's this deli called Bay Cities where they have this famous sandwich called the Godmother, which is, and it's, everybody knows it, but there's only one Bay Cities. And so we would have them make like 1,500 sandwiches at like 10 in the morning, and it would hold up in a car. And then if you were in downtown LA, you would have to drive 2 hours to get this sandwich and deal with a parking lot and whatever, and you wouldn't do that. But with Eats now, you can get that in like 3 minutes. And so that was pretty magical. And so we found some of those sort of like getting access to interesting restaurants was an important sort of insight in early days. But our customers kept telling us they wanted more selection, and we kept telling them they wanted faster delivery. And then they said, okay, that's cool, but we want more selection. And we eventually wised up and, said, okay, fine, we need to redesign this product to be more selection and lower speed. And that's, at the time, DoorDash, Postmates, Deliveroo, a number of people were doing a version of this. We thought we could make it a lot faster, which we did. We were the fastest delivery in that space, but selection's really what mattered. And that's what unlocked everything. And then the team went from, in 2015, December, when we launched that version of Uber Eats in Toronto, I mean, literally in the first 2 or 3 hours of launching it, we did more sales in those first few hours than we did in the last week with the previous product. And so that's what I mean about step change signal, in your business. And when we did that, we then had to prove our unit economics, et cetera. That took a couple of months to get everybody comfortable. And then we just stepped on the gas. And so from that point, it was probably a team of maybe 100 people to when I left, it was a little over 3,000. And that was 4 years later. And so it was, I think we had a 1,000-person sales and ops team, probably a few 100-person engineering team. So it very quickly went from me and 8 or 9 people to thousands and thousands of people everywhere in the world. And so you just have to change as a leader very, very, very fast. You go from being the analyst figuring out the business to leading a team of people who are tinkering and enabling them to almost like a figurehead, when you have 3,000 of employees, you're worried more about communication strategy and goal setting and morale than you are worried about 10 basis points of margin in Sao Paulo.